deck kind of surfacing now. There was the original build that I kind of put together, and people have, kind of just gone different versions. We saw a version of this deck win Grand Prix Buenos Aires. Here's a Thoughtseize to get things underway. So we'll see exactly what Lanceford's working with, which is a Xenagos, the Reveler. You've got a Sylvan Caryatid and a whole bunch of lands.
Yeah, and this is one of the issues that Jund monsters or red-green decks in general have, is that Thoughtseize is so good against them because a lot of your deck is basically geared towards mana ramp and then one powerful spell. And if they just take your powerful spell, then you really don't have much of their action. So you can see here, Brian has the option of taking a Caryatid or the Xenagos God of Revels. Xenagos God of Revels is obviously very good against the Desecration Demon deck, so we'll see here what Brian decides to do. I wouldn't be surprised if he just takes a Xenagos here and leaves him with nothing but mana.
Yeah, and that's exactly what he's going to do. He says, take care of the Planeswalker. I'll deal with that 0-3 at my leisure. As Lanceford draws, looks like a Gorkline Rampager, going to play Blood Crypt tapped and pass the turn back here. Brian clearly knows what he's up against now. He's played Jund monsters before. He's obviously very well informed on the standard format, but most importantly, he's got to figure out what the exact mix of cards Lanceford has, again, because there are many different versions of this deck. For example, Lanceford has a main deck Golgari Charm, where a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah, the thing about the Jund Monsters deck is generally you see the same creature base and then you see the same spells. Graham is basically playing the same creature base, but he's just skimping his numbers here and there. Like, he has two Xenagos God of Revels, which is a card that you don't really see that often in this deck. But like you said, he has a copy of Golgari Charm, and then he mixed up his removal package. Sometimes you just see straight up Dreadbore, but he has one copy of Dreadbore, one Abrupt Decay, and then two Mizzium Mortars.
Speaking of cards that we don't see often, Ramaz, King of Resco, is going to show up here, but Graham, with the answer, drew a Mizzium Mortars. Going to play a Forest, follow this up with a Scavenging Ooze and passing the turn back. So he uses all of his mana on his third turn, slows down BBD just a little bit.
So pretty good draws here from Graham. He is opening hand just all mana, and now he drew a removal spell, a Scavenging Ooze, and I think he might even have a Stormbreath Dragon in his hand. Oh. So pretty good recovery there from Graham.
Maybe they're going to play a Mutavault, going to follow up with a Desecration Demon. So the 6/6 flyer that's been running rampant over the standard format is here in this game. Lanceford's going to untap. He's going to take a draw. It's a Blood Crypt. And don't forget, when the Thoughtseize did happen, there were 5 lands in Graham's hand. Looks like he's drawn mostly spells to this point, but a land right now, not the best of draws.
Yeah, we saw Ross Merriam play Jund Monsters last round, and he had 3 copies of Dreadbore in his main deck, and this is the exact reason why you want that card. Desecration Demon can be very, very problematic for a deck like Jund Monsters. It basically can block and kill every threat you have, Stormbreath Dragon being the biggest one.
And you can actually see here how the brakes have been put on Lanceford. I'm sure he would love to get in there with that Scavenging Ooze, but it doesn't look like he can afford to. So he's got a real decision to make, and the decision is to pass the turn back. Braun-Duin will untap those 4 lands. He'll take a draw. We'll see if he has a 5th land, anything sweet to cast on this turn.
Yeah, it looks like he might have drawn the Whip of Erebos this turn. So if that does come down, suddenly that 6/6 Desecration Demon has lifelink as well. So even more problematic for Graham.
And that's just a one of in BBD's deck list. Again, he's playing a little non-traditional version of Black-White mid-range, but one that he's happy with is he's going to play a Bile Blight here.
So it looks like he's going to target Scavenging Ooze. Graham will remove the Oreskos, but he's just going to be able to gain a life with that. It won't be able to make it ooze big enough to survive Bile Blight.
Desecration Demon trigger on the stack. Graham says, that's fine. I'd like to keep my Caryatid, thank you, but I will take 6, go down to 15. Wonder if Graham's going to regret removing that Bramaz with the Scavenging Ooze. He does have additional copies of Scavenging Ooze that he could draw, so, he could make another one bigger later because he knew that one was going to die no matter what happened. So we'll see what ends up happening here, as he is going to cast Stormbreath Dragon that you did mention. He's going to come across for 4. BBD's going to go down to 12.
Stormbreath, one of the few cards that can actually get you back in the game at times. He can, if he has another mana, he will be able to monstrous it next turn if it survives, which will make it bigger than the Desecration Demon. But again, Brian's deck has so many removal spells. We'll see if he'll be able to find an answer to Stormbreath Dragon.
Yeah, a lot of actual removal spells. Of course, the 4 Heroes Downfall, which is pretty standard by this point. It also has 3 copies of Devour Flesh, 3 copies of Bile Blight. Enough cards to really contain the Stormbreath Dragon. The big one here, I'm a little surprised to see, are those 3 copies, of Devour Flesh. But the way that the metagame's kind of shifting right now, we've seen some Naya Hexproof decks kind of start to run around a little bit. Bile Blight's looking a little bit better as their Heroes Downfall right away to get that Stormbreath Dragon off the table.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I think Bile Blight is definitely one of those cards that kind of is definitely more impressive now than it was basically a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because you see a lot of more aggressive decks now to kind of contend with Esper. So Graham loses his Stormbreath Dragon, and this is the frustrating thing when you're playing a Jund Monsters deck, because sometimes you feel like you're just getting mana flooded. But the reality is, this is what your deck is. It's a bunch of mana ramp and then threats. And that's why it's such a struggle to beat decks with Thoughtseize and Doomblade effects, because you really just can't do anything about it.
And heaven forbid they have an Underworld connections too. Then things get very difficult. You see Brian put the Desecration Demon trigger on the stack. Sylvan Caryatid is going to go to the graveyard. And the follow-up will be Obsidian, one of Brian's favorite cards. Trigger. Brian will Brain and Drain up to 14. Lanceford down to 7. Obsidian's going to go hiding for now, but Graham Lanceford is in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and Brian still has that Whip of Variables in his hand, so he's going to be able to gain a lot of life. So Graham just can't overcome the big threats from Brian's side of the board, and Brian is able to win the first game, and getting one step closer to being 6-0 in this tournament. Yeah,
pretty one-sided game there, as we're going to take a look at the sideboards here. We'll take a look at Graham's first, and since I'm familiar a little bit with the Jund Monsters deck, we'll start there. 2 copies of Mistcutter Hydra, 2 Rakdos' Return, 2 Nylea's Disciple, a Dark Betrayal, a Mizium Mortars, an Ultimate Price, a Dreadbore, more Singletons, and Duress, Abrupt Decay, Rurik Thar the Unbowed, a Slaughter Games, and a Thoughtseize. So in this particular matchup, one of the things that you need to be able to do is contain Desecration Demon for the reasons that we just saw. It's very hard for him to get off the table and attack through. So I expect to see the Ultimate Price come in. You can expect to see the Dreadbore come in. I also expect to see this Dark Betrayal. Dark Betrayal, actually, a card we haven't seen a lot in Jund Monsters because black is a splash color, but it does take care of both Desecration Demon and Obsidian. So a nice answer there. We could see Rakdos' Return come in. Abrupt Decay is going to be an interesting one because he did see Bramaz, and there is Underworld connections in Brian's deck. There are no pack rats lying around, but I expect to probably see that come in. And then you can make arguments for a card like a Thoughtseize, a Duress, or Rurik Thar, but I think those are the easy ones.
Yeah, and on Brian's side, he has 2 copies of Sin Collector, 1 Ultimate Price, 2 Doomblade, 1 Duress, 2 Lifebane Zombie, 1 copy of Dark Betrayal, 2 Erebos, 1 Revoke Existence, and 3 Blood Barons. But we kind of saw this in the last round. Don't really think Blood Baron is something that effective in this matchup, so I don't know if he wants to bring in Blood Baron necessarily. I do like the fact that the Lifebane Zombies obviously very good, Doomblade, Ultimate Price, so I would say 5 cards in total are probably coming in. The Lifebane Zombies, Doomblade, and Ultimate Price, those are probably 5 guaranteed cards coming in. The other card I think that should probably come in is the Sin Collector. I mean, Sin Collector is one of those cards that I think you don't really think about, oh, well, it might be good against Jund Monsters, but Jund Monsters has a lot more spells after board than they do game 1. So I think Sin Collector might actually not be that bad, because if you can go turn 3 Sin Collector, take their Dreadbore, and then follow up with Desecration Demon, that's pretty huge against red-green. So I don't actually hate Sin Collector in this matchup, but cards I don't like in this matchup are Bioblight. I don't think Bioblight is very good against this deck. Obviously, we saw it kill Scavenging Ooze, but in general, there's really not a lot of targets for it. I don't think Whip of Variables is actually needed either in this particular matchup. So I'd probably board out those. I also don't like the Revoke Existence. So it's possible he might just board out those 5 for the 5 I initially mentioned, the Lifebane Zombies, the Doomblade, and the 1 Ultimate Price. But I wouldn't be surprised if he swapped out 2 of his main deck Duresses for 2 Sin Collectors.
Yeah, actually, all the points you made with Sin Collector, I definitely agree with. And the other thing, too, is that, you know, this deck is going to board in a lot of spells, obviously, to take care of your creatures. So you're actually going to have more targets than you probably would in game 1. So Sin Collector, one of the reasons to actually play white. You know, obviously, we see people going towards black-red, as you did mention, Eric Froelich, but you also saw... who played it last round that you were in here?
Oh, Andrew Tenjum.
Thank you. Yeah, you saw Tenjum playing that, and you know they're able to move towards that because again, you have so much discard. You have Slaughter Games. You have Rakdos Return. Well, Sin Collector does play a role. I mean, discard, even though the body isn't terribly relevant, it's better than nothing, I guess you can say.
Yeah. The only question is, does he want? I like having a Duress-like effect. So the question is having a body better than Duress? I'm not quite sure, because the fact that you can cast Duress a little earlier and take out a Domri might just be better. So he might just keep in the Duresses, I don't know. But I do like the idea of maybe fitting in some Sin Collectors after board along with my Duresses.
One card that does seem very well positioned right now is Obsidian Ghost Council, a card that we saw Brian use in that game and over the course of the past year used to great effect with how much Esper is floating around. It doesn't seem like they have a lot of great answers to the card. A lot of people are going towards Esper to splash, you know, Doomblade and Ultimate Price, which doesn't take care of Obsidian. Not a lot of people on the Dark Betrayal sideboard plan anymore. So I wonder if Brian will get a leg up during the tournament because of that as Game 2 is underway. Graham with an Elvish Mystic.
It's also really good against those mid-rangey decks that we've been seeing. I've been seeing junk decks walk around the table, obviously Jund Monsters. So it's really good against like mid-rangey decks because they don't have a lot of answers to a card like that.
Here's a Duress. You were wondering if he was going to leave him in, and he did. Domri and Abrupt Decay are the choices. You see Sylvan Caryatid, Gorkline Rampager, and Temple of Abandon on the other side. And this is part of the reason that you actually wanted to leave in duress, is the fact that you can't take Domri, and that's exactly what it's going to do.
Yeah, so perfect timing there for Brian. He dodged a turn 2 Domri, which could have been devastating for him.
Yeah, Mountain comes rolling off the top here for Lanceford. He is going to play the Mountain. The follow-up's going to be Sylvan Caryatid. Going to come across for 1. BBD going to go down to 19.
Yeah, so Graham, he's got the Rampager, which can come down next turn. He has a Temple, which can kind of smooth out his draws. But again, losing that Domri, it's so hard beating these black decks because Thoughtseize, Duress, Hero's Downfall, Doomblade, those cards are just so good against green-based decks.
And they have so many of them, too. That's the big problem. You know, you need to have just a steady stream, basically just top-decking a creature every single turn. As here's a Devour Flesh. Brian going to give you the option. Which one do you want to keep?
The best strategy against like black-white mid-range decks is generally to be either very, very aggressive or gain enough card advantage through like a Sphinx's Revelation or something like that. This deck does neither. So it really has to try to lean on his Planeswalkers, which we saw there. If they just Thoughtseize them away, then there's really nothing you can do about that.
Now Graham drew running lands, a Mountain and then a Blood Crypt, so he drew lands that he could play on tap to cast the Gorkline Rampager, but all that means, if you're on Brian's side of the table, is I know exactly the cards in your hand, and I also know what you've been drawing for the turn. He has a Temple of Abandon and Abrupt Decay in his hand, that's it. So Brian going to play a Godless Shrine untapped and pass the turn back.
Yeah, and this is the part of the deck that I like. Whenever I play red-green, it's so frustrating because you have to play around 23 to 24 lands plus your 8 mana ramp guys. So more than half of your deck is mana sources, and then not only that, but you also have to play spells like just removal spells in order to contend with, just so you don't die to like a Desecration Demon. So you actually don't have that many. You don't have a huge threat density. So you're really exposed to cards like Doomblade and Hero's Downfall.
Especially after sideboard, where you're boarding in more spells, especially in this particular matchup. Like, as important as Domri is to this deck, after sideboard, you imagine, again, that card like Dark Betrayal, Ultimate Price, Dreadboard, Duress, Abrupt Decay, we know came in, Thoughtseize is going to come in. Those are all spells, so it's going to lower the chances that you can actually hit with your Domri.
And I don't think any of those spells actually kill an opposite out either. So it's really, you're really just very vulnerable to cards like that.
Here's 5 mana. That's a Stormbreath Dragon there for Graham Lanceford. He's going to get in the red zone. Hero's Downfall is going to take care of that. So even though BBD's not hitting lands just yet, draws a Burmass for the turn that he can't cast, he's still doing okay because the removal spells in this deck are so powerful.
Yeah, it looks like he might have a Thoughtseize in his hand. Yeah, he does have a Thoughtseize, so he's going to get rid of the last card, which is an Abrupt Decay, and he knew about that.
Yep.
I think now that he drew the Burmaz, he figured, all right, might as well get rid of it now in case I draw a white source next turn.
Lanceford will draw a card. He's just going to pass the turn back.
So let's see if Brian can. Nope, he doesn't draw a land, but it is a Doomblade, so he has plenty of removal right now.
And there is a Stomping Ground.
Drawing plenty of land for his turn.
Duress, let's see what you got. It's a Mountain.
So Graham, unfortunately, he's getting, again, land flooded. It seems that way, but really, that's the deck. I mean, that's what happens to Jund monsters a lot. So we're going to see Desecration Demon come down for Brian.
And even though Brian has been missing his land drops and things of that nature, first of all, a lot of the times we say that mana screw beats mana flood.
Yeah.
That's number one. But number two, it's like, okay, when Brian is having some difficulty here finding land drops, well, Desecration Demon gives him something to do, but it also is just crazy closing speed. I'm just like, well, now, Graham, you need to find something to do, or I'm just going to kill you really fast.
Yeah. Graham has 1 Caryatid, which he can sack.
Yeah.
But, he's really in a tight spot here. He has no way to actually interact with Desecration, to kill the Desecration Demon. And even if he drew Stormbreath Dragon, which is probably his best threat, it just gets chumped by Desecration Demon. So, and it likely won't survive a turn to get monstrous. So, pretty tough spot here for him.
Tapping a lot of mana. Looks like it may be a dragon, and it is. That thing's stuck on defense. I suppose he could consider sacrificing the Caryatid to get in 4 points of damage, and then, maybe he goes monstrous the next turn.
I think I would do that, actually, because you drop Brian down to 11, and you potentially put him in range to kill him next turn, but looks like Brian's just going to get to untap here, and we know he has that Doomblade in his hand, so Stormbreath Dragon is not long for this world.
Oh, the black-white mid-range deck has a removal spell? Tell me more. Here's the Mutavault. Not another source of white mana, but Desecration Demon Trigger looks like it's going to be placed in the stack here. See if Graham wants to sacrifice or just take 6, and he says, I'll take 6, that's fine. Go down to 13.
So Brian does have a 5th mana now, and this Doomblade is going to take care of Stormbreath Dragon before Graham is able to monstrous out on his turn.
And that's actually one of the things I've liked from Brian over this match so far, is just using his removal spells as sorceries, because even though Doomblade's an instant, you can get yourself in a little bit of trouble there, a little game of chicken potentially.
Yeah, I think there's times where you might want to try to game your opponent a little bit, but I just don't feel it's necessary here. So Brian wisely just decides to cast it main phase. And now Graham is able to resolve a Domri, and he reveals a Reaper of the Wilds. So getting a little action here.
A little bit of awkward tapping using the Blood Crypt to cast the Domri. I mean, he does have a Sylvan Carrier. He actually has to play the Blood Crypt untapped. He's going to go down to 11 so that he can play Reaper of the Wilds and keep up the ability to give it hexproof.
Yeah, he's got the Carroted, but like you said, he doesn't want to tap it. Plus, you know, like you said, he wants to be able to have mana up to make sure he can give it hexproof. So Graham is now still in a tough spot. He has to deal with that Desecration Demon. He's at 11. Don't think he can really afford to sack something right now. Doesn't, and this, oh, I guess he wants to keep the Domri in play for a little bit.
Yeah, this is an interesting situation where it's like, okay, first of all, does Brian want to attack Domri or does he want to attack Graham? Second of all, the demon triggers on the stack. If he floats, that's fine. And he's going to get the Scry because a creature died. But he also puts himself in this odd situation because of the way that he tapped his mana. Had he tapped the Caryatid for mana to cast the Reaper, then he wouldn't have to do this really odd dance of floating mana off the Caryatid and then hoping he's able to give Reaper of the Wilds hexproof.
Yeah, because he can't, the mana doesn't float anymore, as we learned last round. So he's going to have to just give it hexproof and then hope it works. Hope that Brian doesn't have anything.
And it looks like it may have worked, but also Brian looks like he's giving this a little bit of thought on if he wants to maybe kill that or not. Again, we only know one card in Brian's hand right now, which is the Bramaz, which he still can't cast.
He also, I believe he might have an Obsidian as well, so he can't cast that, and along with an Elspeth. So he's got a lot of powerful spells, but unfortunately, he only has 5 mana, and
well,
correction.
What are we even talking about here?
He has the world.
There is Obsidian. It's going to come in, it's going to gain Brian 2, it's going to drain Lanceford 2. There goes Obsidian hiding. And all of a sudden, this one's looking a little tougher now for the Jund Monsters player.
Yeah, so Graham still has that Domri in play. He's going to get another hit with it. Looks like he might have drawn a Scavenging Ooze for the turn, so not a bad draw there for him. It's going to give him a little life cushion and potentially give him a card that's big enough to actually fight Desecration Demon.
Yeah, I mean, he might have to go through a little bit of a situation that I don't think he wants to go through, but he's really not left with a great option, which is starting by attacking with the Reaper. They're giving the Reaper Death Touch and fighting the Desecration Demon with Domri. We'll see if that's the line that he's going to take. And it looks like that may be it, because he needs to get Desecration Demon off the table, because he can't contend with that and hopes that it's too much.
Yeah, so it looks like he does do that. Then he's going to scry with the Reaper's ability. And now he can play Scavenging Ooze. And now he can actually, I believe, with 3 mana up, he should be able to make the Scavenging Ooze a 5/5.
And he's going to go doing that right now, it looks like. And he's got, as you mentioned, the 3 green mana available. So Brian's going to look at the graveyard of Lanceford. Lanceford actually is going to look at BBD's graveyard. They'll exchange a little bit of information. The big issue here, obviously, for Graham is, well, 1, that Elspeth in Brian's hand, but 2, the Obsidian doesn't have to attack.
Yeah, Obsidian doesn't have to attack, so he can keep draining him that way. But the interesting thing for Brian is he has that Elspeth, so he can play the Elspeth next turn and make 3 tokens. But Graham still has the Stormbreath Dragon and potentially Mizzium Mortars as an out as well. So this game's a lot closer than it was a couple turns ago because of Domri.
Yeah, that's what Domri does. So Ooze is going to remove 3 creatures right away. It's going to go up to a 5/5. Graham will actually gain a little bit of life, but Obsidian's going to take some of it back away. So he's going to go down to 10. Brian's going to go up to 15. He's going to take a draw. Let's see what he finds.
I think it might have been another Bramaz, so not the best draw for Brian there. And this is the 2nd round in a row where we've been seeing Scavenging Ooze do some serious work. It's been really, really impressive.
Wow, Brian offering up a little trade here.
Wow, so so Graham's just going to lose his Domri. I'm surprised there. I thought he would have jumped at the chance to kind of take out an Obsidian. But I guess he just really values that. I guess he really values the Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised there too. You know, on the flip side of things, you did see Scavenging Ooze in the last game. Now, excuse me, we saw Bile Blight in the last game. Doesn't mean that Brian left it in, but at the same time, it's really all Graham's got. So he might just be valuing that Scavenging Ooze very highly. This is all I've got to work with, and I kind of need it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you might need to try to. I felt like you might need to try to dig for, like, Stormbreath. I feel is one of your best outs here. Maybe Mizzium Mortars. Mizzium Mortars will allow you to kill the Elspeth. That's not bad, but again, you're still getting drained every turn, and you can't even, and you're going to be taking like a lot from the attack from Obsidian as well. Yeah. So eventually, you're going to have to block an Obsidian, and you can't keep refilling your creatures anymore because you don't have that Domri in play.
It sounds like to me what you're saying is that Obsidian and Elspeth are good Magic cards.
They're pretty good. They're solid.
How about Elvish Mystic? Is that one good?
Well, it's a good chump blocker. So yeah, Graham's in a tight spot here. He's got no cards left in his hand, and he just has that 5-5. I feel like, obviously, it's not. He didn't end up drawing anything, but if he still had that Domri in play, maybe he gives himself a little more outs. Right now, he still has to deal with that Obsidat, and I just felt like if you have a chance to just deal with it, then you take it out.
That's just what makes the card so good.
Yeah.
It just gives you a bad option all the way around. I mean, yeah, you can trade with it in your scavenging use, and Brian would have been fine with that because then you can just write Elspeth to victory. Now he's got both, and again, we might not see another attack with Obsidat this game. We'll see what ends up happening. It looks like maybe those soldiers are feeling a little frisky.
Yeah, why not? If you can get 1 point of damage in, it's worth it.
Just going to get 3 more anyway. Who cares if one dies? And it looks like we're going to have Elvish Mystic on trading duty. Scavenging Use will eat one of them. 1 damage will come across. Lanceford will go down to 7. You see BBD at 17. Elspeth going to put 3 more soldiers into play. So 4 overall. And Beauty can even finally cast a Bramaz after playing a Swamp.
Yeah, so even if Graham top decks a Mizium Mortars to wipe out Brian's side of the board, Brian still has that Mutavault in play, so he's able to block the Scavenging Ooze and protect his Elspeth.
The card you're looking for here is Bonfire the Damned.
Bonfire would be fantastic.
That's the one. That's unfortunately not legal.
Rakdos return, potentially, if you brought it in.
There is one of those in the sideboard. He's reaching for mana, so it looks like he found something. It's 3.
Domri? No,
it's a Courser. That's going to reveal Stomping Ground. He has not played land yet, I don't believe, so he could take that off the top of the deck and gain himself a life, push him up to 11, but he's still in a bad way right now.
Yeah, I think if Brian just attacked, Graham's going to drop to 8 next turn, or 9, because he gains a life now. And then there's a Dreadbore, so okay. Dreadbore is a way for him to deal with Elspeth.
Yeah, it might just end up being too much now because Elspeth's going to make more tokens.
You're going to get a token from Bramaz as well.
Yeah.
You're going to get drained here down to 9. So, yeah, it might just be too little too late for Graham.
Brian will draw a card. It's a Godless Shrine. Another card in his hand is Bramaz.
I think everything's coming in, except for maybe Obsidat.
Might see Mutavault. Maybe. I don't think Mutavault's probably a bad attack. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of like Mutavault attacking too, just because you know the Dreadbore. You know what's on top of his library. It's a Dreadbore.
Sure.
So your Elspeth's going to die no matter what.
See, if we were to fire at Mutavault and just give it with everybody, you put Scavenging Ooze in front of the Obsidat, you put maybe the Courser in front of the Mutavault, you take 3, 4 from the Cat token. It's 5, 6, 7, 8, go down to 1. Ugh. And then 3 more soldiers are going to come out. I think...
And he's got another copy of Bramaz in his hand as well. So if Bramaz gets eaten by Ooze, he's just going to rebuy it anyway.
I think Brian can afford to get in with everybody in this situation. You see he's going through the permutations right now, looking at the graveyard, thinking, okay, what can you remove with Scavenging Ooze, if anything? There's a Dreadbore coming, and then you're going to draw. That's the only spell I have to worry about next turn.
Yeah, I like attacking with everything but Obsidat.
I almost kind of like getting Obsidat in there because it's just Scavenging Ooze is priced into blocking that. Maybe I'm undervaluing Obsidat in this situation.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to. Obsidat will probably kill Graham next turn or the turn after, and limit his outs, especially because Brian's going to be able to uptake Elspeth yet again. So I think if you're Brian, you just attack with everything but Obsidat.
Yeah. He goes reaching. Yep, with Obsidat too. So yeah, everything but Obsidat. Excuse me. So Bramaz, the trigger's going to put a Cat Soldier into play. A lot of different ways to eat this Reese's.
Yeah. So Graham could potentially just take 5 here, and then. Yeah, so Graham's going to take 5 from the Soldier tokens and the Cat token, drop down to 4. Brian can play the second Bramaz in his hand and then make 3 more tokens.
Yeah.
At this point, there's really nothing Graham can draw. And we know the top card is a Dreadbore.
Yeah. And there's no mystery card coming. There's the other Bramaz. There's a Godless Shrine tap. Brian going to confidently pass the turn back. We'll see if he blinks out the Obsidat or not. He does.
Yep. So Graham is effectively at 2 life now. If there's a land on top of his library after the Dreadbore, he'll gain another life. But
you see a couple Scavenging Ooze activations, going to get rid of the Rampager and get rid of the Bramaz. So he's going to go up to 6, I believe, after those 2 activations. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Scavenging Ooze. Obviously, the 2/4 Courser, the Dreadbore off the top of the deck. He has to kill Elspeth, obviously, because the ultimate is threatening. He doesn't have any other choice. And I think he's going to come to the same conclusion that we are in the booth as well as you guys at home, which is he's on an offer.
Yeah, unfortunately, Obzedat's going to come in, drop him down to 4, and he's only got 2 blockers. Even if he uses the Dreadbore on the Elspeth, which he has to, because Elspeth's ultimate ability will kill him, Brian just has too many tokens that are coming through.
It's a different take on black-white than what we've seen before. Again, we're used to seeing cards like Pack Rat, used to seeing a card like Blood Baron of Vescopa in the main deck. Elspeth is the industry standard at this point, and obviously it's having a huge effect on this particular game. Dreadbore will take care of it, but it's already I think, done enough.
I kind of like the idea of playing a spell-heavy version with not many creatures. I'm just surprised he chose to go with Brimaz over Lifebane Zombie.
Me too. Me too. I'm actually really interested in that decision to go with that, as Lifebane Zombie has been so incredibly popular recently, and with good reason. The card's great.
And I actually think it's probably a little better against some of these versions of Esper we're seeing anyway, because they have Doomblade main anyway. So, interesting to see. I'm sure Brian will write an article about this deck come following week.
Chances are. I know he played this deck at Grand Prix Cincinnati. Went 6-3. He switched off of Esper to play this deck. As you see, an extension of the hand. Braun-Duin is going to win over Graham Lanceford 2-0. Black-white mid-range does take down Jund Monsters. But if you do want to check out why he made that switch and why he's playing it this particular week,